When I tell you that crypto is on the very edge of the biggest transformation of wealth we've ever seen and probably will ever see again, I'm not joking. What the charts, what the catalysts, and everything I'm going to show you in today's video has to say is that you, my friend, are not late, but very early. What we've got cooking and what the markets have cooking is something that I think is going to blow many of us away. Now, some of you may be laughing already going, we've had the bull run. Just wait, my friend. Wait until you see what I have to show you in just a moment. And yes, I'm going to run over some quick catalysts here very quickly because these things just stack up. Every day there's something new. I want to go over all the latest as well as jumping into the charts that make me say we're about to have a monumental supply shock. Guys, don't forget though, before we get into it, hit the like down there if you find yourself enjoying the content. Make sure you're subscribed. And with that said, let's bloody begin. A quick rundown of the massive catalysts that just keep on building. CZ, you can buy Bitcoins after the US government is done buying or before. The choice is yours. What's he talking about? Well, Donald J. Trump is talking about continuing his push with crypto in the United States.
Points and Bitcoin has set multiple all-time record highs because everyone knows that I'm committed to making America the crypto capital. We want to stay at the forefront of everything, and one of them is crypto.
Trump is committed to making the US the crypto hub of the world right now, or at least it's migrating into that. But as it stood a few months ago, it was completely the opposite of that. So we have billions, if not trillions, on the sidelines already starting to find its way in, like Wisconsin here doubling the amount of Bitcoin holdings that they previously had, which is incredible. Trump's even committed to possibly adding in here some of the Doge savings into giving that to Americans, obviously for that stimulus check that would obviously be, again, in many cases used to buy crypto, kind of like COVID was. Abu Dhabi, well, of course, they're buying as well. $460 million in their sovereign wealth fund. One of the Injective co-founders said he had meetings with some of the largest institutions in the world looking to enter crypto. He can flat out say that 99% of crypto Twitter is wrong in the sense of being bearish. You are all grossly underestimating the months ahead. And that's at least what Hong Kong seems to agree with as well. One of their largest investment firms here, I think it's Avanar, invests $600 million into Bitcoin via an ETF. Barclays, yes, that massive bank over in the UK and wherever the hell else they are, they're buying Bitcoin too, $131 million. Fidelity, these guys are like, $5 trillion in assets under management. Well, of course, they're not buying just Bitcoin. They're also mainly buying Ethereum, I think, getting ready for the next move. Now, here's the thing, guys. A lot of us have this thing in crypto where if price doesn't move up and meet our expectations, oh, it's the end of the world, okay? Back here, when we entered and first broke into the $90,000-ish level, which was, again, something that 6 months ago we would have been like crazy about. Well, what's happened? We've been kind of trending in this sort of range here, consolidating, I do think, for a while. It's been about, as you can see here, give or take 3 months. Now, the interesting thing about this is we've gone as high as 109,000 and as low as 91,000. But when we entered this particular zone, we were at a fear and greed of 83. Very bullish indeed. We very rarely will see 100, I believe. So 83 is quite high. Now we're at 37. We are in the fear section, right? Greed, fear, polar opposites. Now, the only thing that's changed is time. Because you may sit here and say, well, of all the catalysts, kind of everything you just mentioned, yeah, no, those institutions, those banks, those nations, they're in it to lose money. All right, just ignore that. They're here to lose money. I think, emotionally, the market's going to go down. Well, here's the thing. If you were around in the last cycle, you very well know what it feels like to have all of the bearishness happening, plus being 30, 40, 50% lower from the highs. We aren't right there just yet. If these like 4 dojis, these 4 days in a row, say anything about the recent price action, including this, it's just that price is being manipulated right now to leverage retail, as they always do, for exit liquidity when they send the prices higher. Actually, matter of fact, price has only gone higher in the last 3 months. It's taken 3 months, and you guys are sick of it, kind of like what was happening back down here when we ranged for pretty much 12 months. You guys were sick of it, and everyone was happy yet again when we broke up into the 90s. Now tell me, how many of you guys, with Bitcoin particularly, ended up selling at some point over this period from like March, April to October, almost like 6 to 8 months, 12 months, whatever. only to buy back in again once we broke the top of this range and went into the 90s, only to get pissed off again now and wanting to sell at this sideways action. Guys, as you can tell, it's accumulation, and then of course they send the price higher. This is the whale's tactic. And this is what they're doing right now with altcoins. Bitcoin, of course, is ranging between reasonable levels, so to speak, but also fallen down 50, 60%, some of them even 80%. Like, what's happening with alts? Well, essentially, a lot of people end up, of course, in times of panic with the tariffs and with the DeepSeek news and whatever else has transpired over this time. They look to go into Bitcoin. Okay, they're looking to go for that safe bet or stable coins. The thing is that money is on standby. That money is ready to come back in again, particularly because a lot of you, as you've probably figured out firsthand, are emotional investors. Unfortunately, it is what it is. Because if it were the other way around, then, of course, institutions couldn't extract money from the regular old person, all right? So being an emotional investor, your mind is always tethered to price. Forget fundamentals, forget pumpermentals, forget looking at the charts, forget anything else. Price goes up, you are happy. Price goes down, you are sad. So your mind is tethered to price because you are emotional. And again, it's just the distribution whales have done throughout centuries now to extract money from the regular old person. So by selling on these dips or selling when you're bored, you're actually playing their game because, again, you're tethered to price. So when price does eventually break through these key levels, you think, oh my God, this is great. So these altcoins are down 50, 60%. Of course, they start going up 20, 30, 40% on the day or on the week. And your mind goes, hey, forget about the rest. I'm just going to throw my money in. And you will make money for a time being. But there is a point in time where, of course, you then forget about everything else. And the whales end up dumping on you at the top because they promise you $1 million Bitcoin. And you fall for it, of course, because you're emotional investor. So just understand how this game is played. Understand price has actually gone up in the last 3 months, but fear has gone down drastically, while a monumental, in any other bull run history, one of these catalysts would have sent the price enormously high, has began mounting, and we haven't fallen down to crazy low levels, bear market-ish falls or collapses. Here's where the supply shock stuff starts to make a lot of sense though. In conjunction with all of the amazing bullish stuff I just mentioned and everything else, I of course have no time to regurgitate every single video, you have this. Bitcoin is moving off exchanges. What does that mean? Well, people take Bitcoin off exchanges when they want to hold. They bring them on exchanges when they want to sell, because unfortunately you can't really use Bitcoin on chain. You have to sell it into USD first, for example. So you can see here, since November 4th, we have been rapidly taking Bitcoin off exchanges. This is worldwide, by the way. All the while, since November 4th, there's been a massive surge in whales buying Bitcoin. And also, ever since November 4th here, you can see an exponential increase in Bitcoin flowing to accumulation addresses that continuously hold Bitcoin without selling. You can see here it's kind of come up. It has come down, but we are on the rise yet again. Not to mention, Bitcoin ETFs here have reached an astonishing number, 6.1%, which is about 4 years worth of the future Bitcoin supply. So the whole next cycle has been purchased and is held right now in the Bitcoin ETFs. And this really started picking up, again, guess what? Since this date here, which happened to be November the 4th. The exact same here with Ethereum began to really pick up since November 4th. So I know you're asking yourself, Kyron, what is November 4th? Why has this date been a sudden increase in all of these charts? Why are whales buying more? Why are whales sending, all their Bitcoin off decentralized exchanges and holding more? Why do we have all of these massive updates in the US and worldwide now? These entire nations and massive institutions and banks custodying Bitcoin in not just small amounts, large amounts. We have massive leaders around the world saying, this is about to get crazy. Why has it all started since November 4th? My friend, the answer is simple. Okay? The answer is simple. We are going to have an extremely worldwide, because of this particular, administration in the US, this unlock, I believe, in crypto. We're not just going to have the US involved. This is going to release a whole bunch of tension worldwide because the US are seen as leaders. And I get it, but Kyron, institutions, whales, they're buying because they're long-term investors. They're pushing it to their clientele, institutional and retail investors, because they're telling them to buy and hold for the long term. But guess what? If there's still going to be a bear market, why the hell is everyone buying at these prices? Why would these guys not just wait a little bit longer, 12 months. To them, it's nothing. And buying at the lows. Why are they so consistent and persevering with buying now? You must ask yourself this question. They are buying and are now more interested than ever because they can actually now custody, in a lot of these cases, legally, transparently. Actually, it's promoted Bitcoin and crypto. They see long-term application and they know money is coming. So the 2024 change in Bitcoin ownership here saw most of individuals and whatever the hell others is sending out money. And governments over here were also on the negative because a lot of these guys, like before the current administration in the US, were actually selling off, including Germany, selling off their Bitcoin. Now I think the script will flip likely. And businesses and funds and ETFs, well, these are on the rapid increase. What does that tell you? Retail is selling, businesses are buying. This typically happens in an emerging market once we break through this, the period of speculation we are right now, merging now into real utility, real application. This sort of like period of distribution from the regular type of person, you and I, retail, into the large institution. This happens forever. All right, you can't have these institutions continuously get wealthy unless someone loses. So we're kind of the suckers in this situation. And guess what? We're the suckers because of sentiment. Let me ask you a very simple question here. Why do you think retail only? Retail, down there, look at the comments right now. Pause the video, look at the comments. Why are people crying while these guys are buying? Why are we still above $90,000? Actually, almost $100,000. Why aren't we at $40,000, $50,000, $60,000? Why? Okay, it's because they're gearing up for something. It's accumulation period right now. Do your own research. I've got some more charts here in a second, and you should do more research, by the way, because this isn't financial advice. Look at the purchases here into MicroStrategy, a proxy into Bitcoin. MicroStrategy has like most of their holdings in Bitcoin, of course, as we know. They're the 5th largest Bitcoin owner. The comparison of UBS and BlackRock's MicroStrategy holdings in table format. What does this show? This shows that some of the largest holders of MicroStrategy stock is BlackRock and a massive multi-trillion-dollar company called UBS. Now, here's the thing. You can see how much they own. MicroStrategy is the number 7th largest holding in BlackRock's portfolio. Okay, that's insane. That's obviously a proxy to Bitcoin. Okay, it has to be. Out of all the companies, they pick MicroStrategy. And now I get a lot of people asking me the question, Kyron, the bull run won't happen unless we go into QE. Obviously, right now we're in QT, and things can't happen without that. But I disagree. And I went over this chart in a recent video, but very briefly here, guys, we've 5.5x on Bitcoin's price since the very beginning of QT back here, pretty much after we immediately exited QE in the last cycle. And, that's a lot of multiples, by the way. That's going from like 16K to where we are right now. But even in the blue zone, which is the 12 months prior to the last 12 months of the 4-year cycle. Now, usually in the blue zone, we see kind of like less multiples, except for the 2021 cycle, obviously because of quantitative easing, because of, lockdowns and stimulus checks. People just threw money into crypto like no tomorrow, causing the green zone to be lackluster compared to that blue zone. But again, that was an anomaly. That was weird. You can see this cycle is kind of like the previous two, the earlier cycles, where we had much less impressive blue zone gains. But the last 12 months is really, really explosive. Now, I don't think we'll have 88x gains or 20x gains like in those two earlier cycles in this next 12 months here. But I see us at least matching the 2x we had in the blue zone because we just had word right before I started this video that the Fed had in their minutes that there was a survey done where most people are actually expecting a change and a flip from QT to neutral. Okay, not QE, but neutral. And this should be okay because we had a very explosive 2018, 2017 cycle with a neutral period as well. The same with over here back in 2012. We still could have QE, of course, but again, just being neutral, I think is fine for now. Global liquidity, which as you'll soon see here, has just synced up perfectly to the crypto cycle. Now at highs we haven't seen since back in the .com boom, with apparently no end in sight. Colin Talks Crypto with a great post here. I recommend you go follow him, and has mapped Bitcoin's price on a 52-day lead because as he pointed out, and I recommend you go watch his video on this particular situation. It seems that we are about a month or two behind the global liquidity, and it matches up quite frequently, actually. And as he plots it out, it seems that, global liquidity in around March really begins to pick up, which actually times very, very well with when we can expect Bitcoin's dominance to begin falling and ETH to, snap, which of course will cause alt season, as I've mentioned many times. We're waiting for this for alt season, and it seems, based on his breakdown of the sort of confluence with Bitcoin and also the global liquidity that we could see this, and especially because global liquidity is just absolutely going parabolic. So with that all being said, I mean, very, very bullish catalyst. The charts look great. The global liquidity is going up. The Fed's looking like they're going to go neutral here again, maybe even QE. I doubt it, but that's a possibility. And everything else involved, nations, institutions, banks, everyone's buying Bitcoin. Everyone's pro-crypto. Everyone is relaxed apart from you and I. Well, I'm pretty relaxed. I don't know about you. With all that being said, though, we want to look at some charts here just for, I guess, extra confirmation of what's actually happening. Now, what you're looking at here is the MVRV extreme deviations. Now, MVRV is essentially the market value and realized value added together and finding the mean of both of these numbers, or the mean pretty much meaning the average of both of these numbers. But first of all, what are these two numbers? Well, market value, or MV, is the last traded price of Bitcoin. Since the last traded price of Bitcoin is $97,000, the market value here is $97,000. That's pretty easy to work out, but what about the realized price? Well, the realized price takes a single Bitcoin and works out the last price it was when it was last traded. Now, if I've been holding Bitcoin since, let's say, $1, and I haven't moved those Bitcoins, well, then each of those Bitcoins is technically priced in as a realized price of $1 because that's what I paid for each of them. Someone might have paid even the tops over here at $109,000, so they might own one Bitcoin, and that's $109, mine's $1, and so you take all of the average purchase prices of Bitcoin, aka the last time they were traded, add them all together, of course, as you would find the average by dividing them by the amount of Bitcoins in circulation, and you get the average price. So, for example, there might be the current market value price of $97,000, but the realized price might be $9,130. So when you have what's called the MVRV score, it's basically kind of like the middle ground between the two. You can see this is actually the realized price here with Bitcoin's current price. And so when you refer to the MVRV score, it's pretty much the mean or the middle between these two numbers, as if there were a line between them. But why this is so important is when you know the realized value, you essentially know what the average person paid for their current Bitcoin. So therefore, you know how much money they are currently up. So considering the realized value right now is $43,000 and the actual market value is $97,000. This means that this is 43. That means if you take $97,000 as the market value and divide that by the realized value of 43,000, the average person is up, roughly speaking, at 2.5x. So how powerful is that? That's why we have some of these tools, like the one I'm about to show you now, having a red score here, because that means that the average person is actually up right now. So again, they are mostly in profit. So when we're looking at a chart like this that compares the MVRV Z score, so again, like kind of the mean between the market value price and also the realized value price, and then talks about deviations. The deviations here are the different colors, but it's how far essentially price ends up moving away from the mean between these two numbers. If the traded price again on Bitcoin goes from 97,000 to 110,000, this will likely change from like where it is now in orange, probably to a more reddish color. If price falls beneath the MVRV number, which let's just say right now is about $70,000, then it would go into this greenish bluish color, maybe even just in the yellow. You can see the deviation numbers here, and that's of course why we have these colored zones. Now, importantly, looking at this particular chart, why I like it so much is because you can also see the colored zones here. These colored zones tell us, of course, when the average person is likely in a lot of profit. So red and orange here are pretty much, hey, people are in quite a bit of profit right now because the price is a lot above the MVRV score, or when people are not so much in profit, but when they're actually in a loss. Actually, in this green and bluish color, they're actually in a loss most of the time. So it's probably a good chance to spot buy some Bitcoin. What we kind of see here is that essentially 6 to 12 months of pure redness is usually the top of the cycle. So we've seen a little bit of red recently mixed in with orange. Orange actually isn't too bad at all. Yellow is normally a warning color, but actually, in fact, yellow on this chart is pretty much average. It's either beneath or just above the mean. So that's okay. But yeah, when you kind of see red for about 6 to 12 months, that's usually pushing the end of the cycle, because that of course means that most people on average are in profit. So I hope you've been able to sort of see the importance of actually tracking market cap value to also realize value. Now, here's a very powerful tool, having a look at the relationship between long-term holders and short-term holders. The three lines you're looking at on this chart here, the red line is the short-term holder average buy-in price, so their realized value. The orange line is just Bitcoin's realized value, so everyone's average buy-in price. And the blue line is long-term holders' average buy-in price. Okay, so looking at their relationship. Now, one immediate thing I'll point out here is that the short-term holders, this red line, tends to be a very, very powerful line of support. We'll talk about here in a moment, because most of the time, you have short-term holders not just being more emotional people like you and I, for example, but also institutions and sort of market makers buying and selling the dips. Whereas the realized value is a great level of support, and the blue line, my God, if you ever see price go down to the blue line, that means that essentially Bitcoin's price, like in these purple colors, is essentially at the buy-in price of the average long-term holder. So that's, of course, a great buying opportunity, and chances are everyone, short-term holders and long-term holders, are likely buying underneath that, or maybe panic selling. Depends on the person, of course. So the way we're going to look at this here is quickly, when these sort of bands contract, again, in these purple colors, great time to buy. We'll use this chart in the future for a good buying opportunity. But when they really branch out and kind of flare from each other, you can see back here, over here, here, and here happens to always be the bull run. Now you can see we began to start to flare out since these lows back in 22, but we've nowhere near gotten towards this sort of separation from especially the realized value here in Bitcoin's price, which is the average cost basis for the average Bitcoin buyer, versus the long-term holders. Normally, this is a massive, massive separation. And again, we're nowhere near that just yet. The average long-term holder here is basically very similar to the average person investing in crypto regardless. So what this tells me is, again, we do have some more time to still go before we can assume the worst is coming, right? The end of the bull run. So honing in more to these short-term holders, because I think this is really, as you'll soon see, where the power is when it comes to price movement. And what we can see here is something pretty interesting. For the most part, the blue line here is that sort of realized value. Essentially, it's their cost basis. Now, the red band is just a high deviation and yellow band is low deviation. Now, the red band here particularly, when this is actually hit and definitely exceeded, short-term holders like to take profit, so price doesn't really remain above this red band for too long. Conversely, price doesn't like being below the yellow band too long either, probably because short-term holders are inclined to keep buying and buying and buying. So, of course, that's why we have this like blue line here being a pretty good level of support, generally, at least in a bull run. So again, they sell up here, they buy down here. So price likes to kind of stay with these short-term holders. Now, short-term holders also do include the big institutions and whales buying and selling very, very quickly. So it's not just your more emotional investor as well. So right now you can see we are again on that level of support, and I would be more so concerned right now if we were towards the top, that red part. But again, right now for a bull run, that blue line, that's where we kind of use for a bit of support. So everything's going to plan, guys. I'm on track. I'm happy. I'm content. I'm going to let the people cry, let the noise sort of settle, and eventually the whales will flick the printing machine on, and I think we'll begin to explode. I don't know when per se, but there are some indicators to suggest in the next couple months, but let's just wait it out and see. Thanks for watching this far into the video. Let me know you have by hitting the like down below, and I'll talk to you all very, very soon. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.